Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kasper On BI. Today, I'm excited that we're going to talk about data visualization, a topic that we don't spend enough time talking about, especially a lot of us people. We like to talk about DAX and performance and relationships and don't spend enough time on the actual front end. Like, what story are we going to tell users and why is this so important? As a guest today, I have Prathyusha Kamasani, our data platform MVP, has been talking about data visualization, tips and tricks, and the importance of it for a long time. Pre-cons at SQL Bits talking about the subject. So really interested to hear her views and her experience in this too. So with that, let's go to the episode. So hi Prathi, honored to have you on the podcast. It's great to see you. I'm looking forward to hearing from you about data visualization. But before we go there, a lot of people already know you and from the community and things that you do. But maybe for those who don't, can you share a little bit of what you do and where you work and what it entails?
Yes, thank you, Kasper. And I'm also very excited to be on your podcast. So what do I do? Well, I'm Prathy Kamasani. For the people probably from India, or you could say my full name. It's Prathyusha Kamasani. I work in London. I'm based in London. I work for Avanade, UK, and Ireland. I work at director level. I basically do Power BI, Power Platform, a bit of Azure, and basically working with Microsoft data tools.
And then,
yeah, I think that's.
you're missing. I think you're missing one thing because this is, I think, how I know you. You also organize user group in London.
London Power BI user group. Yes, yes. I started London Power BI user group I think it's more than 6 years now. Or 7. It feels a long time ago. I organize London Power BI user group along with James Dales. We organize in London pretty much every month, and we are very fortunate to have some of the best speakers. Many people call it as like a Power BI celebrities. Pretty much most of the Power BI celebrities presented in the London Power BI user group.
Yeah, so who doesn't come through London at one point, right? So
exactly, I think it's the mission which makes it really easy. And also when the SQL bit happens in London, that's amazing. You were part of when we had this one of the biggest user group ever. And also when SQL BI did their trainings in London, and we have our local celebrities like Chris Webb. You come to London quite often, so we have you. Yeah. So it's quite nice.
Yeah, I can imagine. So were you always into data? Like, how did you start?
When I was in uni, when I was in uni, bachelor's, I did my bachelor's in India, and I studied computer science. So obviously we had a class for data. I hated it. I always wanted to become a Java developer. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know why either.
I think it's because my older cousins were doing Java and everyone was doing Java training. So maybe that's why I wanted to do it. But I came here for my higher education. I did my master's here in the UK. And then at the end of my master's, that's when I was pregnant. And so I was not very good pregnant. And then I was so I couldn't, that's when I couldn't work during the pregnancy. And that's when I thought, what can I do? And one of my friend was working with the SQL Server. And I thought, okay, why don't I do it? So from Java to .NET and from .NET to ADO.NET. And that's how I kind of got interested into data. I left everything else and I stuck with data.
Yeah. So you learned it while you were pregnant?
Not really. So then I was more just playing with it. And then I had my baby and there was a bit of, she had a few health issues. So I think when in that period when she was baby, that's when I kind of I joined this training BI course from India. So there was an online training, and they used to do in India in Indian timing. So that was like a 2:30 a.m.
Oh,
here
wow.
in the UK, and I could only do it that time because my daughter was very attached to me, and because as I said, she was going through some stuff as well, so I could only attend the classes at that time, and they were also doing only that time. So I think for a few months I've done classes waking up at 2:30 a.m. in the morning.
Wow.
So yeah, that
And
was
what were the classes about?
it was about SSIS, SSRS, and SSAS. I think they did talk about SQL Server as well, but I don't remember it that well if I did SQL Server, or maybe I learned SQL Server myself. I don't. It's a long time ago, but I remember the guy who taught us. He was really good, and we had a group as well on the classes, and they were all quite nice. It was so one attendee who was also K. He actually came to user group one day, and he recognized me and said, "Oh, Prathy, we actually went to these online classes together." I was like, "Oh my god!" He was very happy for me that how far I came in the journey.
And then in the work, you immediately started going into BI work, or?
I think I started as a database developer in a way. But, in those days, a database developer is more like, you not only do SQL Server data warehousing. I started more like a data warehouse developer. And but that involved a lot of SSIS as well. So SSIS, I loved SSIS. I still love SSIS. Yeah, it's such an amazing tool. So the SSIS made it really nice to do the data warehousing because ETL was really important. And then SSAS and also SSRS. So that's kind of a title said a database developer, but it's more like a BI developer. So that's how I kind of started.
And then because, I mean, everyone knows you mostly for your passion on data visualization and looking at things. When did that start? When did that became an interest? Because it's very different than doing SIS. Except when you're Matt Mason, you can have My Little Ponies through SSIS, but anyone else, it's just, it doesn't look great. So when did that start?
I could probably say Matt Mason inspired me with all his ponies on the SSIS, and how could I? I think it started from SSRS probably. So in SSRS, you could do quite a bit of conditional format, things like that. And I always wanted to do something more to my report than just out of the box. So it may have started from there, but I think it's also a bit of me. I like colorful things. I like creativity. I do a bit of painting, so I do a bit of oil. I did actually a bit more than I'm doing now. I did a bit of oil painting. I did a bit of watercolor, and I do journaling quite a lot. And in my journal, I draw a bit and things. And also, I have an allotment. I grow flowers in my allotment. So all these things kind of inspires me. And I think the Power BI became a tool where everything comes to one place. Everything I did or I was passionate about, SSIS, RS, AS, it all combined into one tool. Honestly, when the Power BI started, I never thought I would become a full focused Power BI developer at one point. I always felt like, it's going to be another tool to this tool set. But quite quickly, I became a Power BI designer or developer. And Power BI just made it so convenient to get interested into this data visualization. And also, I think there was a bit of influence as well. I think I spoke to Chris Webb. He one point said, you always have do something that you are passionate about. I remember this conversation with Mark Russo in Seattle in a pub, and he was talking about his journey, and he also told me, like, you have to, you could be good at so many things, or you choose a thing and you get really good at it. And I think that's how kind of got into it. And you gave me some nice data visualization books that also helped.
Yeah.
So I think it's all these things and my passion for database kind of made it, I think. I don't
Yeah, it
know.
makes sense. So let's talk about that, because it's still like when we go to conferences and you're there and there's maybe one or two people talking about data visualization. It's very much still, I mean, we definitely see it changing, but it used to be more an afterthought than anything else. And it's mostly because of people like me who just throw stuff on the canvas, and like we're more interested in the data modeling and the performance and the DAX than about telling the story, which is, I think, what's the most important. So why do we all collectively need to do more on data visualization, according to you?
Well, so as you said, database is changing, and data visualization is very important. I think everyone knows that. And that's probably why Power BI also getting really successful. But I think there are various questions in your questions. It's like, this is again from my experience and what I feel is many people are not interested in the visualization bit, is because most of the people who doing Power BI, they are probably Excel users, or they are the users, somebody like me who used to be a BI developer or a database developer and become a Power BI developer. So when you are coming from that background, what you wanted is a really good data model and really good DAX. You get excited about it, and that's what you're passionate about. When you talk about Excel users, they are also, what they want is they want just these wide Excel tables and then export them into Excel.
Yeah.
I think that's where I feel like not many people are caring about it. But it is very important. It's because, most of the time at the end users, when I'm talking more from a developer designer point of view, the end users are not going to see the data model. Yes, data model is very important because end users are going to see the performance of your reports. But the thing that they are really looking is the user experience of your report. So I think that is why it's important. And also, we are also, as a disease, we are we need to think about, we are putting something there. It should show the right values. It should show the right story, because quite quickly with the data visualization, you could completely tell a wrong story. And it's our duty to make sure our reports are giving the better user experience. So that's why I think it's
So what does better user
important.
experience mean? Like for me, a good user experience would be like, again, a few charts and they look good and they give me the right numbers. So yeah, why is that not good enough? I'm just playing devil's advocate, obviously, but
I know. So the better user experience, I have a really good example is, I think I have this book called The Design of Every Day by Nelson Norman, by Norman. So he talks about user experience in his book called The Norman Door. So what it is like, we all, I'm sure everyone, most of the people experience this, is you go to a door and instead of pulling, you push, and instead of pushing, you pull. But Norman says, when there is a pull, why there is a handle? If there is no handle, you don't pull it at all. Or you may keep the handle for locking or something. But right next to the handle, if you say pull, put a sticker saying pull, and that reduces the chance. So if you don't put a handle, there is no pulling. And you anyway keep a handle because of whatever the reason. If you put a label next to it, then that reduces the chance of pulling. So that's the user experience. It's like you create something so the end user understands. And also, like, especially in the Power BI world, and this is again my personal opinion, is like many people create this pop-up or a pop-up filter pane on the reports.
Mm-hmm.
And I like not filter pane, like a slicer pane, a pane with various slices, and user could go click on it, then it opens up a slicer pane. You could go and choose various slices and click apply, and then the slicer pane hides. But if you think it from the user experience point of view, how many clicks you have to do before you get your result? So that's
Yeah.
a user experience. So that's basically, I think.
Yeah, just to make it easy and make it insightful quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, so and so how closely is it related to like UI design in general? Like when you create a website, is it
Sorry,
similar
can you say that
thoughts? Like when you have a UI design for a
again?
website or an app or phone, whatever, is it similar
I think
principles?
so. I think so. I think the principles are pretty same. Like, we could use most of the UX principles, like, Gestalt principles. We could use most of them for creating the Power BI report design. Because again, this is something I tend to talk. I like talking about this in my when I'm training about data visualizations as well. It's like, it is important to you don't deliver Power BI report like a report. You need
Yeah.
to deliver it like a product. And when you release a product, how do you deliver? Like, you have a product, you think about that, how the end user is going to use it, and also you give the design guide about how to interact with it and all those things. So it is very similar to web design or a mobile app design or any
Mm,
product design.
yeah. And
And it
then
is important to think that way.
yeah, that makes sense. And it's also, I mean, probably if you want to learn, there's a lot of material out there too about like general UI design that is applicable to Power
Exactly.
BI. So, and maybe one
Yeah,
more thing, like when you go like last week there was this the prize winning data visualization awards and all of these things, but those look very different than what we built on day to day, right? That's more data journalism written in code with D3. How is that different than what we do? Like when you
to
create a
Power
Power BI
BI.
report,
Yeah.
yeah.
See, honestly, I would create that kind of reports. Like, I wish I have a project where I get to do that kind of like completely standout visuals, and probably with Power BI. But you can do a lot of those things. Probably not at D3 level. You could do most things with the Power BI as well. But for your question, like, how is it different from our day to day, what we do with the Power BI? I think it's because like those reports are good to tell a story. Like, they're more like an infographic.
Mm,
And if you have like a survey results of your organization, and that's when probably it's a one-off report, you don't really, I think a good example is like, a play axis in our Power BI is like a play axis is amazing to showcase when you're presenting something. But if you have a play axis in your everyday analytics report, it's going to get really annoying.
yeah.
So I think, yeah, our day-to-day reports are more functional, and those reports are more like showcasing the things. But I think they both are important. But I like in this my entire Power BI journey, no one ever came to me saying, "Hey, I want this kind of showcase Power BI
No, I
report."
guess I was
That's
thinking about
crazy.
it. Like, how much time would they have spent on that winning report? Like, it's
Yes.
completely different ball game. Like the return on investment for building something like this and doing same thing in Power BI, which looks a bit different, more traditional BI report than whatever they make. But probably it's like it take instead of a couple of days, a couple of weeks. So
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at a report on LinkedIn. It's actually created in Power BI and by using Dynamic visuals and things
mm,
like that. And see, I think there is a difference about good visualization. Again, like, when we're talking about the user experience and the good data visualizations and things. And whenever you're talking about the user experience, there is this rule called or a principle. It's called 60-30-10 rule. It's quite applicable for when you're creating the data visualizations or the web designing or even interior designing. So what it says is like a 60% is your neutral colors, and 30% is your complementary colors, and 10% is your focal colors where you want it to be focused.
Yeah.
So I see many Power BI reports or many other visualizations as well. It's like they have this amazing image on the report, and also some visuals, but then it is important to and what is the focal point? Is the image is the focal point, or your data is the focal point? And if the image is focal point, it's okay. But if that is your everyday report and you come to the report and the first thing you see is this big image on your face, over the time, if you're seeing the same report for a whole month, on the 30th day, you're going to get annoyed. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense.
It's interesting.
That kind of ties into the next topic, because we talked about data visualization in general, but now let's talk about data visualization in Power BI. So I think maybe you already answered it with the previous question, but what's wrong with the average Power BI report that we create? Like, what are some things that you should always do when you create a Power BI report?
Yeah, so this 60-30-10 rule is probably something I would recommend. And I think, like, because I tend to see many, when I go to client places, we see a lot of reports, and I play myself a lot with open data, and I love looking at every possible report. So the things I usually see, especially when you are in organizations who are new to Power BI, they try to keep a lot of visuals. And it's also, I think it's mostly because they don't know Power BI well. This is how I look at it. It's like, as an end user, when you say we have this much data available, as an end user, of course I want to see all my data, because I don't know how long it's going to take, how long a change request happens. So I rather just have my report with full of data, and then whenever I want, I can just use that single element of visual. Again, we need to remember most of the end users come from Excel background or used to Excel reports. So for them, but I think as a Power BI developer, it is important that's when, we talk about what are the other functionalities available in Power BI, drill down, drill through, click through, and all sorts of those things. So that is one thing I see a lot, is like a lot of visualizations and a lot of data on a single page. The second thing I see is I see some really passionate Power BI developers who wants to use every possible functionality. The things like, pop-up slices and so many amazing visuals, and keeping a map there, or like every I was creating a visual, and I have this energy data of all over countries. And as soon as I kept a map, it started performing slow. And then I kind of asked myself, like, why am I using a map? It's just because for me, it was more because it looks nice. I mean, like if you create map like James Dale, so that's a different story. But somebody like me, I keep it just because it looks nice with the filled colors and things. So the very passionate Power BI developers, it's also important to think it's not what you are passionate about. It is important what the end user needs. And just because there are so many custom visuals available, there's so much functionality available, it doesn't mean you have to put that one in the report.
So let's
that's why I encourage people to use open data.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because we did get some questions. We're kind of going further down the questions, but let's answer it here. You said let's do what the users want, but the users want everything. Like they just want to see those tables, matrices, as you talked about before, because that's what they saw in Excel. They want to see, they want to download everything to Excel. They want to, so if you're just going to go out and give the users what they want because they don't really know what they want, you're going to get a not so great looking report. So what do you do? Because this must be really a big challenge.
Yes, and that's a challenge you come across quite often. I think there are again. So what I would love to do, and it worked with some clients, and it doesn't work with all the clients. With some clients, when there is because creating a table and creating other visual pretty much takes exactly same time in the Power BI. It doesn't take that long. So what I tend to do is I try to create what the end user want. For example, a table. Actually, now, we have paginated reports in the Pro. So what I tend to do is actually give them a visual appeal, with the visuals, and also give them a button on that one so that they could go drill through into a detail page where they have this table that they could export. And if I'm doing it now, probably I would give them a link which opens up into a Power BI, a paginated report. So in a more formatted way, exactly the way end user want. So what we're doing here is we are showing the art of possibility, and we are also giving them what they want. And many times the end user comes back saying, "Oh wow, I like it and I want it." But there are always there are cases where that doesn't go that way, and there are people who doesn't want to listen the I know it all way, and they say, "No, I don't want your visuals, I just need my report." And in those cases there's not much you can. There are also cases where the PMs are there and we says why are you wasting time on the things which are not needed and things like that. And when you're in those kind of situations, there's not much you could do. But honestly, they both take, it doesn't take that much time to create this kind of layout as well.
And maybe
So
again,
that's how I get in.
playing devil's advocate again, like why is it more important to visualize the data in the way we do proper visualization instead of just dumping all the data on the canvas?
Why is it important is obviously, I mean, the reason of data visualization is because you want to, you the communication happens quickly. So if you have a table with the sales over the time, then it takes a lot of time to process it. I mean, until unless you are some math ninja, there is no way you could see the patterns that quickly. But if you put that in a visualization, obviously you could see the patterns very quickly. But what happens with the end users is because they came from this background and they had the flexibility. I mean, what they want is they want a table so that they could export into Excel and create this kind of line chart themselves. But it is important to understand that the user journey. So this is why it's workshops are very important, is because you need to speak to the end user and ask them, why do you want it and what actions you take from it, what is your next step. So it's like a user flow. Once you understand the user flow, it makes it easier, what they're going to do next. And probably giving that in Power BI is much easier than actually them going to a report, export it, and create something else. So yeah, the user flow is there to achieve that.
That makes sense. So you take people in the user journey, and I mean, apparently, it's probably really important then to really understand the requirements before you get to do anything else, right? So, what do you usually do when you get started on a project?
And it's a very good question. And I feel like I'm still learning what is the right thing to do. It's kind of changes from project to project. We have some internal templates that we do and things, but I also created like a template. And funny enough, this template kind of starts from the beginning of my journey. I did the template of data warehousing workshops.
Yeah.
So basically the things what kind of data you're looking at. So I try to size it from when it comes to the Power BI way. It's we need to look at it, and it feels very similar to the Agile, Scrum thing. So we need to look more what is the user story. So a user story is more I want to look at my company sales, and then you have use cases inside the user story. So the use cases are more like, you want to see sales by region to see which regions are not doing good. And I want to drill down into the regions where it's not doing good to go into the store level and see how that sales has changed over the time. So these are all different use cases. And what happens is sometimes a user story is like it may not be a single set of stakeholders. Sometimes you have multiple set of stakeholders. So you kind of have to sit with these stakeholders or end users and this various information. But I think every single use case should be like what you need it, what you need in it, and what actions you take afterwards. Having those questions helps to create that visual. It's like sometimes what it goes is like, I want to see the sales. That is the key metric. But when the end user says, I want to see the sales by the region, then immediately you are changing into a chart, like a bar chart or a horizontal chart to see where it's going up and where it's going down. And then when they say like, oh, then I want to be able to see which stores in that region, then you are adding a drill through to go to the next page, or like, hierarchical chart or something like that. So yeah, those are pointers that we tend to ask. And also the other things important is like a branding, consistency, themes, what kind of report they want. They want more summarized report, or they want more analytical report, like a.
But again, here
if you have a super user.
Yeah, they will tell you we want to see everything, right? How do you convince them
Yes.
that is it just by, as you said before, like showing them how easy it can be? Like, hey, you can see the numbers you need immediately, and then if you, because probably you don't need to go in depth every day, so you can see the numbers you need immediately, and if something is wrong, then you can go in depth.
Yeah, I think the good way to do that one is like say yes, we actually give them everything they want, but not in one page. So that is the difference we try to do, is like this is where understanding the user journey is like yes, you are getting everything, but to get to that details, you probably have to go for 4-page drill throughs. So you start from summarized view, then region view, then the store view, and then you get the granular data. It's also quite good for the performance from the Power BI point of view as well, because you have filtered set of data. So the minute you tell your end user, no, you're not getting everything you want, immediately gonna get like, they won't be interested. So we are creating these reports for the end user. So I tend to feel like, yes, I will give you everything you want. But there are end users who want like this very long, unique IDs, which serves no purpose in the report. So that's when probably we have to have like a detailed conversations and say why it's not possible and how it's going to impact on the performance and things. But you always have somebody who don't listen to you, and sometimes you just give them, and then it doesn't perform great, they'll come back.
Yeah, but and then it's probably mostly the people who have been already working on different tools, like, or they come from Excel and they're used to having more power, if you will. So how do you get to convince them? Like, okay, yeah, so all the stuff that you used to be able to do in Excel, you won't be able to do anymore here.
Well, I think it's a culture change. I think that's when it's kind of that's when you need to, it's more about driving Power BI within the organization. I think what things that helped is actually teaching end users how to use Power BI. Like that gives them that confidence. It's like, I'm not completely restricted, I have some flexibility. So like you could have this personal bookmarks, you could have this personalized visuals, and you could also give them like, a bit of self-service BI. And there are this one organization where like, they really felt like we are completely restricting from everything. And that's when we gave them analyze in Excel. They were like, oh wow, this is amazing. because it gives them that confidence. It's like, I can still do what I want to. And the self-service BI and Analyze in Excel is pretty much same, like from the attributes point of view, but Analyze in Excel makes them comfortable. And over the time, it's like this change doesn't happen immediately. It changes over the time. And the one other thing that when I worked for a university that we've done is like creating a design guide, actually uh, going and talking about what functionalities are available by taking screenshots and like you could, this is how you create personalized bookmarks, this is how you could personalize visuals, this is how you could change the metric into something different. And we embedded that Word document in the Power BI app. So the end users has the flexibility to just go and see it immediately. Like, it's an easier way to teach them instead of like, having a classroom training or some Teams call or things like that, because it's actually pretty accessible for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I think, one of the things we talked about before too is like there are so many things that you could do in the Power BI reports. So how do you make the trade-off between it looking pretty and usable?
The trade-off. Yeah, well, it's again, this is I think it's very personable. For some people, it's more important than the other people. So, for me, it is very important to have like the report looking nicer. And for some people, it is more about I'm communicating the data that needed. So the trade-off is, I don't know. I think it depends upon the individual, and there are elements like performance and things. I think one of the key thing which impacts on this is the time. It's like how long you have to create this pretty report. Sometimes you don't have time. You just have to create something really simple. And creating something simple and still looking pretty is quite easy in the Power BI, especially with the new themes and everything. You just drop some visuals, it looks pretty nice. As long as you don't overcrowd it and you align them nicely and all those things, it's pretty easy. But I think probably time.
So what are some like you already mentioned some of it, but what are some of the top things that you should do when you create a Power BI report? You already mentioned like aligning. What else?
Mm-hmm. So I start with having less visuals on the report. So for me, like,
how much is less?
Well, it's that's a tough question, Kasper. I don't know. I think, see, again, it depends. It's like sometimes you have various components, like because you're layering things and stuff like that. Even though it may not be on the top, you may have very few visuals, but if you layered it like 10 visuals, it's too much. I don't know. I think I tend to keep like 10 visuals, but again, it depends upon how big your data model is. So you may have a really small data model and you keep 20 visuals, it's fine. But if you have a bigger data model, and I've seen this a report where they have a whole page, it's they actually changed the page size to be able to fit more things on it, and the whole page is completely key metrics, a card metric, like they had like 40 card metrics and something like that. So that's bad, but it looked nice. The performance was bad. So I don't think there is a rule saying these many visuals. It's like you just have to see, are you getting the kind of performance, and you have is the page looking really crowded?
Yeah.
But I think it's as long as it doesn't look too crowded and it's not impacting on the performance.
I remember one of the designers, okay, and when I was still in Power BI PM team, saying always less is more. So
yeah, less is more.
Okay,
less is more, but it's also.
Oh, go ahead.
No, less is more, but it's also like, how you are keeping more in Power BI, because like again, I worked for a client in Netherlands actually, and I have various metrics. They had like many cards, but instead of showing various cards, we changed that into a table visual and kept values in the rows. Sorry, we changed it to into matrix and kept values in the rows and expanded the width so that it looks like a card.
Yeah.
And even though we are using a lot of items, because we used a different visual, it performed better. So less is more, but know your tool. I think it's important to know your tool.
All right. So one is be careful about the amount of visuals that you add to the report. What else?
And always align. Always align the visuals. And also alignment is not more like, having the visuals at the same width. The alignment is like, think about the gap from your border to your visual border. The gap between your border to the visual border, and the gap between each visual, and the gap between your header and your footer, all these elements kind of falls into the place. And this is where Just All's principles talks very nicely. It's like, as humans, we perceive things in certain way. So when you have different gaps, we perceive things. So it's not, alignment is not just about how each visual are aligning. You need to think about the white space between each visual. That's important thing. And also the color is important thing on your page. If you're following 60-30-10 rule, it's, if you follow 60-30-10 rule, that automatically makes it less is more kind of like a minimal report, because you have a lot of white space. That means you have less visuals as well. And we can do different things. You could create like horizontal navigation and create visuals.
I was just curious because you talk a lot about aligning and things like this. How much time got saved off your Power BI report when grid lines came?
Oh my God, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I remember, because in the beginning, what I used to do is I always used to use a background image, because I was so tired of having this, trying to make them align. Somehow I always used to make mistake. But now having those lines, oh my God, it's like a lifesaver.
I can imagine.
It's like, it's as good as IntelliSense in DAX. When there was no IntelliSense in DAX, that was also really painful. So it's as good as that.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Okay, so aligning colors, and so how do you decide which colors to use?
Oh, that's how much time do you have?
Quite a lot, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think, well, most of the times the colors kind of like, if most organizations has a color palette, so you could basically tend to use that one. Or like I tend to, whenever I'm working with open data set or something inspired by nature, like, if I have a plant or a flower, so it could be anywhere. There are so many resources out there, like a coolers.com, like some palettes that is pre-made, which goes well with other palettes. And there is a website called I Want Hue. It's a fantastic website. It also even talks about accessibility, like, how the colorblind people could see that color and things like that. So there are various things that you could use, and there are some really cool tools, like, eyedropper is your favorite, like my favorite tool. Like, you could just go and hover over colors, and so you could play with it. I think I would start with some palettes that are already available out there.
From the teams?
And then
you mean from the teams in Power BI, or
no, not from, you could use themes, but I'm more talking about, like, like when you look for some color palettes in Google, it comes back with some really nice color palettes. and you could choose something from there and use the eyedropper to pick the color and use that color, create a theme in the Power BI. So that's mostly what I tend to do.
And then
But
for
if
the
you want
colors,
a
you
really
mean
quick report, you could use.
the colors, you mean like what colors are we talking about? Yeah, you're talking about background colors, or you're talking about bar colors, like the color of data itself. Like what colors? What do you like? My reports look white. That's it.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with white reports. Apparently, white reports are very minimal, and having a lighter background makes your report look minimal. But I think it's bit of everything. Like, I think you just have to look at it like with open eyes, and like you go to a website. For example, I get inspired by Apple website. You go to Apple website, and the background and the contrast, like it's it's a light background. Most of the Apple websites is, and they use this color. Well, at least last time when I checked, they used color F6, F6, F6 for background, and that's what I tend to use whenever I'm creating a lighter background
And then
reports.
background, you mean the
It's
background
so
of
it
the
is
report, right?
background of the report. And then on the foreground, when you have that kind of color, you could use pretty much any colors. And there is a whole color theory. I mean, you could also Google about like a color theory. It talks about like, the corners of the color palette and which color should be going for what and things like that.
I'm going to
But
ask you for all the
if you're
links,
not
and
that interested,
we're going to put them in the description.
yes, I'll send it.
Okay, so we talked about color. What's next?
The colors, visuals, alignment. Yeah, I think and make sure your data model is performant enough, because like it doesn't matter how amazing your report looks. If your data model is slow or giving the wrong values, that doesn't serve the purpose. So that's another important thing.
Yeah.
I know, I can't think of
So how do you decide which visual to show?
So I have again, I will send you the link and you could put it in the chat. So there is one of the good website is a chart doctor. I think it's from Financial Times. So it talks about, so it's about finding the patterns, like, what kind of data you have, like a behavior patterns in your data. See, like, do you have time data or geographical data, things like that. And think about what kind of data type you have, string or numeric. And then you, as soon as you know those two things, then there are quite a few sites available, and it tells you what kind of visual works for your behavior of data and your behavior of that data type. And there are various, like, you may get a choice of 10. And between those choice of 10, finding that right visual is like a journey. So, and again, in the Power BI, there is putting a visual is one step, but extending it to tell the story is another step. So for example, if you're taking a table as an example, yes, you could just drag and drop a table and add all the columns you want. And that gives what the end user want. But understanding the end user and also making sure the visual fits fine compared to the rest of the story on the visual, how big it used to be, what is foreground, what is the background, should I increase the width, should I increase the font size, should I change the font size, and should I add some conditional formatting, and all those things, kind of a bit upon understanding user and a bit understanding your 60-30-10 rule, and a bit about yourself as well, like to be able to figure it out. How is it looking on the page?
Yeah.
Some people care and some people don't care. So I think that's where the difference is. Like, are you passionate about it or not?
And then, so how often do you go back? So, okay, those are so how often do you go back to the business like to show them where you're working on and what you're doing and getting them along in your ideas?
So again, it changes from project to project and client to client, but we encourage, and I encourage to have it like for every week or 2 weeks, like whatever, how long your scrum lasts, how long is your sprint. But sometimes there are cases where I was in a scrum call where it lost 30 minutes, so we had a chance to showcase what we were doing. But otherwise, like just before the sprint planning, we had a chance to showcase what we have done. And it is important to always communicate with the end user, your stakeholders, and showing them like fail faster is important, especially when it comes to the data visualization. You don't want to create the entire page and ask them, what do you think? And wireframing helps really nicely here as well. Like you could use mural, you could just use a whiteboard and talk about, hey, this is where I'm going to get metrics, and this is where I'm going to get a visual. You could use PowerPoint for wireframing, you could use Canva, and if not, just a white paper works amazingly well, just talking about where goes what. So, and at least it is important to also be transparent to the end user, explaining well enough, like why we cannot use certain visual, how it's going to impact, like that.
Okay,
so
that makes sense.
as often as you can.
Yeah. So when you have a new Power BI project, like you would go talk to the business users, show them a quick wireframe. Like this is what we're thinking. Are those the steps?
Well, I'm gonna give a nice consultant answer.
I knew it's coming. Yeah.
It depends, but ideally, if we are talking about an ideal project, then you get a requirement saying like we need a Power BI report for this thing, and you have discovery phase to understand the user requirement. Go with have a workshop to understand the user requirement, where the data is coming from, and analyze phase where you understand where the data is coming from, and then a wireframe phase where you talk about this is what we're going to do. And the wireframes are also different, like for some people we could say we're going to have a chart, a suitable chart, but there are wireframes where it is more like very structured wireframes. You actually display which visual is going to be there, what colors are going to be there, how it's going to interact, and things like that. I like more loose ends, because it gives a bit of flexibility to see what the performance wise as well. And then explaining them like you have this page, and then you drill through actions, buttons, and things like that. Actually start developing it and have a workspace where end users also has access, so the end users can go and start playing with it while you're creating the next page. And this is where the communication is important, transparency is important, and also tell the end users that this is not a finished product. So as long as you're doing the user testing while you're developing, it really well for the report creation.
All right, that makes
but
sense.
It is ideal case, not
always happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, reality.
If I can choose, I would love to do that.
Yeah. Some projects it works, but sometimes it doesn't.
It doesn't work. Yeah, and also it's not all the projects are blank, like a vanilla projects. In the beginning it used to be, but we got into that stage where they want to upgrade their Power BI projects or change Power BI projects, and we see many requests about they want to migrate from Tableau to Power BI and things like that. And that's when they want to have the similar behavior they had. So you don't really have this workshops things. It's like, it's already there. I just want the same thing in Power BI.
All right, that makes sense.
And then there is it.
Sorry?
And then there is budget.
Oh yeah,
how much money you can spend.
Yeah. All right. So maybe what is the one thing that you're missing in Power BI that would make your data visualization life better?
Yeah. I actually said this to Miguel as well, is I would love to have like a, how in the SQL Server, in the Visual Studio, you have different panes. You could detach a pane and you could have panes next to each other. I would love to have each report page to be detachable. So I could keep one report page one side and the other report page other side on my white screen. So I could see the user, okay, this is how my step 1 starts in my user journey, and now I'm designing step 2. So at the moment, I have to keep going back to the previous page to figure out the behavior. If I actually have next to each other, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I would love that.
But that's more like for you. Like, is there anything like for developer purposes? But what about, like, is there anything on the data visualization thing that would make it easier to create good looking reports? Or not really?
Again, because I have a wishing man now, I would love I don't know what is the word to explain it. Like, for example, when you have an iPhone, when you open it, is a little movement happens, like a little transition.
Yeah.
So that kind of a look and feel in between the visuals. So when you're clicking on a button, instead of
on and off.
The transition what we have, on and off, I would love to have a bit of so Power App has the transitions, that kind of transitions. When you're moving from one page to the other page, if you could have that kind of a little transitions, I think that makes it a bit more.
That makes sense. Cool.
From the designer point, it's
yeah. I mean, that would be fun to see. But then it becomes almost like an actual app. So that would be interesting.
Yeah.
So that's about. So what about what is the most exciting feature of Power BI in the last year for you? I always ask this question to anyone, and it's always interesting how, like, I don't think I've had the same answer ever. So everyone loves different things.
I think for me, I enjoy, I mean, this feature is not new, but paginated reports in the Pro I think that's a game changer, especially because you always get.
That's exactly what Wolfgang said in the last episode too. So this is the first time that we have, so there's a lot of excitement around that. And I think it makes sense in data visualization space, right?
It is because you always get these end users who wants to export the data, and exporting in Power BI is not the best. I mean, it's great, but paginated reports are there for that purpose. So
exactly, and you can export it in any way you want. Definitely. So
yeah.
All right, cool.
I love that.
I think we've learned a lot. We're at time. I really want to thank you for your time. It was very interesting. I think everyone would have learned a lot about data visualization and why it's important, especially people like me who don't spend that much time thinking about that stuff. So yeah, again, thank you for your time and really happy to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Kasper. I also had good fun talking to you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
And that concludes another episode of Kasper On BI. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time talking to Prathy. I learned a lot about this data visualization, some tips and tricks. If you like this episode, hit the like button. If you want to see more, subscribe. You can also listen to this as a podcast on iTunes and Spotify and whatever else you want to listen to too. And there's some more amazing podcasts coming up soon. So with that, I'll see you next time.